information. As you may have seen, on Monday, the President and the First Lady will travel to eastern Kentucky with Governor Andy Beshear and his wife, Brittany, to visit communities devastated by flooding in recent days. They will also survey recovery efforts at one of the region's FEMA disaster recovery centers. We have been closely monitoring the floods since they began, and our hearts break for the families of those who have lost their lives or are missing, and for all of those who have been impacted. The President quickly directed his team to surge federal support to the region and authorize additional disaster assistance for eastern Kentucky last weekend. Since then, FEMA has provided more than $3.1 million to support impacted individuals and families in their recovery efforts. More than 400 state and federal search and rescue and water rescue personnel, as well as members of National Guard, are on the ground supporting search and rescue efforts. And earlier this week, Secretary Becerra also declared a public health emergency for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, which gives the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services beneficiaries and their health care providers and suppliers greater flexibility in meeting emergency health needs. And finally, the broad coalition of support for the Inflation Reduction Act continues. Today, over 40 major companies, including Levi Strauss, Logitech, Shell, Lyft, Unilever, and more, sent a letter urging Congress to pass the Inflation Reduction Act because it will combat inflation, lower prices for Americans, invest in manufacturing, and transition our country to a clean energy economy. And a bipartisan group of former EPA administrators called this package the most significant piece of climate legislation in United States history. And finally, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which represent communities across the country, said they are counting on Congress to get this bill done without delay because it will take critical steps to slash carbon emissions, provide affordable health care, and so much more. And with that, Josh, it's game day. It's game day for you. Welcome to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so let's start by going there. First of two subjects. The jobs report today came in stronger than expected, but some economists and some of the financial markets say that there's fears that means inflation could stay elevated. What does the White House think this report tells us about inflation?
So today, as you saw from the president's statement, the unemployment rate matches the lowest it's been in over 50 years. That's 3.5%. More people are working than at any point in American history. And we have gained back all of the jobs that were lost during the pandemic. And so what the president did was quickly repair the labor market that was caused because of COVID. The labor market was damaged, as you all know, the supply chain. There wasn't a COVID response, comprehensive COVID response. And so that was the president's primary goal and the goal of the American Rescue Plan. And let's not forget, that passed in April of his first year. Only Democrats voted for this bill, and because of that, because of the American Rescue Plan, we are coming off of a very strong economy, and so that is important. That labor market is important, and so we can see how the American Rescue Plan was effective, what the jobs that we have gained back, and just a couple of examples. U.S. manufacturing is back with the fastest recovery since the early 1950s, and the passage of the CHIPS bill that will only strengthen our manufacturing more. And we are seeing that the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act is already increasing the amount of infrastructure job. That is all good news. And so that is how we see this current jobs report. And we're going to just continue to do the work. Inflation clearly is something that people truly feel at home around their kitchen table. And the president has a plan to address that, including seeing what we've been able to see with gas prices coming down, a decline that we haven't seen like this in over a decade. And so all of these things are important. And also, we're going to do everything that we can to encourage and continue to talk to legislators to pass the Inflation Reduction Act.
So just to clarify, though, you don't think this report tells us much about the path of inflation going forward, or do you think it does?
What we think is that this is good news, what we saw, right? That means when we gain back all the jobs that were lost during the pandemic, that's a good thing. That's a good thing to have more jobs out there and regain that. That's, as you know, someone who covers the economy, and we're at 3.5%. So all of those things are really important. When it comes to inflation, again, the president has a plan. He's going to continue to do his part on reducing costs for families, and we're going to let the Federal Reserve do their job, be independent. They have the monetary kind of tools to deal with inflation, and we leave that work to them.
Okay, then secondly, given China's actions on climate and the military dialogue with the U.S., does the White House think Speaker Pelosi bears any blame for the rupture? And do you worry that the relationship with China could devolve further?
So, and you've heard us say this before, the Speaker had every right. It is her right to have gone to Taiwan. Members of Congress make those decisions. We do not tell them what they can or cannot do or where they can travel. We have said this many times before. We provide a full, thorough briefing when they do travel. And so, again, there was no reason to have this escalation that we're seeing from China. It is fundamentally irresponsible what they are doing. And we'll continue our efforts to keep open lines of communication with Beijing while defending our interests and values in the region. This is what the world expects, the United States and China, and we encourage Beijing to keep this commitment as well when it comes to the dialogue, the climate dialogue that was canceled, and the military and climate dialogue that was canceled. So this is, again, she had every right. There's precedence for it. We talked about 25 years ago when Speaker Gingrich went to Taiwan, and so we're good. We are not going to, give any more than that on the Speaker's travel.
Okay, you just say you're not going to give any more on the Speaker's travel, but I'm going to ask a similar question
Sure.
in a way, because I think that you guys have said repeatedly that it was her right to go, her decision to go, but now, like my colleague just said, now you've seen the results. Now you've seen what has happened. Do you feel that these escalated tensions in the region were worth any message that Pelosi's visit sent?
I mean, I'm going to say what I just said. The Speaker had the right to go to Taiwan. She's the Speaker of the House. She should speak to the impact of her travel on her own. That is for her to answer. And our focus is on defending our interests, as we have said many times, and the values in the Indo-Pacific. And that's what we're going to focus on.
Back on jobs, I know you guys are excited about the jobs report, but for most people, wages for those jobs are just not keeping up with inflation. So fundamentally, is the anxiety we're hearing from Americans about the economy really an issue of wages and benefits? And what is the administration still doing to work on that?
Look, we understand what Americans are feeling. The president understands that very personally. This is why he has done the work that he's done this past 18 months to get the economy going again. And now with inflation as well, with cost going up for Americans, he's focused on that. This is something that we continue to watch very closely, and we're going to continue to do the work to make sure that Americans feel relief. And so that work doesn't stop. And we know that there's more work to do. But as it relates to the jobs report and where we are and how the economy is moving forward, the strong labor market does matter. The strong labor market does say a lot about the economy. And then we're going to just continue to do the work that we need to do, that the Americans are waiting, the business of the Americans that they're waiting want us to do.
Thanks, Karine. Russia said today that it was ready to discuss a prisoner swap with regard to Brittany Griner in private. And President Biden just told us that he was hopeful and working on it. Can you give us a sense of where things stand agreement and have those private discussions begun?
So we said this, and Secretary Blinken spoke to this earlier this morning. We have made a substantial offer to bring Brittany and Paul Whelan home. They need to be home. They should be home. They are being wrongfully detained. That is something you've heard us say. This morning, Foreign Minister Lavrov said publicly that they are prepared to engage through the channels we have established at the President's direction. As Secretary Blinken said this morning, as I just mentioned, we will continue to pursue those. This is something the President and national security have had on top of mind. This is a priority for them. We need to bring them home. We need to bring Brittany home. We need to bring Paul home. And we're going to continue to do the work that we have been doing in this administration to make sure that U.S. nationals that are being wrongfully detained, that are being held hostage, come home. And so as far as the negotiations, we say this all the time. It remains, not remains to be seen, but we have to keep the negotiations private, and we'll continue to do that. And so, but also we will continue to call on Russia to take the substantial offer that we put in front of them seriously.
On a separate topic, is the White House following the Alex Jones trial? And do you believe that he should have to pay millions of dollars for the misinformation about Sandy Hook?
I have to say I'm not following the Alex Jones trial. I'm gonna, since that's still going on, we don't comment on any trials or litigations or that's happening. Our hearts go out to the families that lost their loved ones. It was a tragic day. That is, the President knows that very personally. He's met with the families, and we continue to do everything we can to protect our communities from gun violence. That's why he was proud to sign the bipartisan piece of legislation that came before him a couple of weeks ago. That's why we're going to continue to do the work to make sure that we protect kids in school, that we protect people going to the grocery store, that we protect communities and families.
Lastly, Governor Abbott of Texas said today he started sending busloads of migrants to New York in an effort to share responsibility with other states. Does the White House have a reaction to that?
So, it's the latest stunt from the governor, another stunt of busing desperate migrants across the country, and he's using them as a political as a political ploy. I mean, this is what he's been doing, and it's shameful. And I've said this before. I was asked this last week, and it's costing the state of Texas $1.5 million. That's what this game that he's doing, that he's playing, is costing Texans, $1.5 million. And we have seen him do this before. His so-called Operation Lone Star put National Guardsmen and law enforcement in dangerous situations and resulted in a logistical nightmare needing federal rescue. His secondary inspections of trucks crossing into Texas cost $1 billion a week in trade at one bridge alone without turning up a single case of human or drug trafficking. So this is, again, I talked about this last week, there's a legal process that we have going on right now, and if he cared about it, if he was really, really serious, he would let that process move through, but instead he wants to play politics and use the lives of migrants who are desperate to be here, who are trying to find a better life for themselves, and use them, and also costing his constituents over $1 million. That's what he's doing.
Jeff just mentioned this, but the president was asked about Brittany Griner, and he said, "I'm hopeful." What is it that is making him feel hopeful right now?
I mean, he's the president. He has to feel hopeful, right? This is something that is important to him. I don't think if he had said something else, it would not have, you want to make sure that he's zeroed in, he's focused on what the task is at hand. His team is working on this, his national security team. You heard from Secretary Blinken, you've heard from us. This is something, again, he has been top of mind. Bringing U.S. nationals home who are being wrongfully detained, who are being held hostage, has been a priority of his. And there's no other place but to be hopeful and to do the work that we need to do to get this done. happen.
But as far as you know, it wasn't a reference to necessarily some specific development or developments that
No,
is now making.
No, I wouldn't read into it. I think, as president, he's doing what presidents do, giving hope. Their families are watching. Their families are listening to everything that we're saying. It's important to give them hope. And I'm hoping that they continue to be hopeful. That is important as well as president, to make sure that you portray that as well.
I just have a monkeypox question. It's pretty well documented at this point that there's a good amount of frustration within the LGBTQ community, people saying that they're having a hard time getting vaccines. I wonder, first, I have two questions. What the president's overall message is for that community, people who are saying they feel kind of let down by the administration and its response to monkeypox.
So let me just first say that the president is going to do everything that he can to end this outbreak. He's going to use pull every lever to fight monkeypox. And, back in May when he was in Asia, he was asked about monkeypox, and he said, we should be vigilant. And that was back in May when we heard about the first cases. And so his administration has been hard at work, making sure that we have a comprehensive response. And what has happened, and talked about this a little bit too, is that it has evolved rapidly. So we had monkeypox back in 2003. We had it in 2021, small cases, but it has rapidly evolved. And this is not uncommon for the dynamic of an infectious disease to change. And that's what we're seeing. And anytime we saw change happening, or we saw that we needed to meet the moment at the time, whatever was happening with the increase of cases, we met that moment. Scaling up our vaccines and testing as it became clear that the virus was spreading more rapidly than other monkeypox outbreaks, as I just mentioned. Very aggressive steps that make sense. That makes sense to the moment that we're dealing with. And you heard us this week with our monkeypox response. 600,000 doses have arrived in jurisdiction, which is going to be incredibly helpful. We have 150,000 doses that were supposed to come in November that is now coming in September. We've scaled up the capacity of testing to 80,000, which is also very important to make sure that we do that. The public health emergency that HHS did yesterday, that is going to help the CDC come up with data to how we do one vaccine to 5 vaccines. So we are increasing the vaccine supply. Again, this has been rapidly changing over the last couple of months, and we're meeting the moment at every turn.
So is there a specific message for the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this is a time that we understand how the community feels. It's very concerning, and I want to be really careful because it's important that we don't stigmatize any community, and so that is also important for us. Look, the president's going to do everything that he can to make sure that we end this outbreak. He is working on this. His team is working on this every day. He's regularly updated. He knows what's happening. He knows how this is being handled. He knows that we are doing everything that we can to increase the vaccine supply, which is going to make a difference. And let's not forget, we announced the monkeypox coordinators just this week. Bob Fenton, who is an expert in mass vaccination site. He's an expert in FEMA leadership, so he knows how to deal with these type of emergencies, and so we're going to continue to be zero focused on this.
So if you are a member of an at-risk community and you're unable to get a vaccine right now, which again we're hearing stories of that, is the federal government's recommendation that you pause or at least reduce sexual activity?
You've been listening to White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre hold a daily press briefing. She said that the president will head to Kentucky Monday to survey flood damage and update the federal response. The press secretary also touted the jobs report showing more than 500,000 jobs added last month.
If you want to keep watching, you can head to cbsnews.com/briefing. But for our part, we're going to take a quick break. We have a lot more news that we want to get to, so stay with us. You're streaming CBS News, always on.
You ready?
A generation of kids opens up
on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Norah O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging winds.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Abortion rights activists in Kansas are rejoicing after voters rejected a ballot measure that could have opened the door to more restrictions.
That outcome in the historically conservative state has significant implications for November. Democrats and Republicans now reconsidering how best to approach the issue of abortion ahead of the midterms. Let's bring in Katie Bernard now for more on this. She's a reporter for the Kansas City Star. So do you think that abortion rights advocates will double down, Katie, on their efforts in Kansas and maybe perhaps other conservative-leaning states because of Tuesday's outcome?
They're definitely going to try. I think it remains to be seen how effective it will be, but Democrats were pretty immediately in Kansas after the vote talking about leveraging the coalition they had that, defeated this amendment into fighting for Medicaid expansion and other progressive goals. They certainly don't expect the anti-abortion activists in Kansas to go away anytime soon. But meanwhile, we're seeing Republicans already pivoting in Kansas to messages of, on the economy, on tying, local Democrats and state level Democrats to Joe Biden and trying to change the subject, moving on to what's next.
So let me get this straight. You're already seeing Republicans in Kansas changing their approach to abortion now, being concerned that voters are going to reject candidates who are too vocally anti-abortion. Are you expecting that you'll see that trend continue to hold to the midterms?
I think certainly. Republicans in Kansas were already planning a message focused on the economy, focused on inflation, focused on gas prices heading into the midterms. And they had been, at the state level, our gubernatorial candidate, Derek Schmidt, had been strategic about his messaging on abortion, talking about the amendment, but not abortion restrictions themselves. This vote to Republicans was a signal to double down on those economic messages, And speaking to the chair of the Kansas GOP yesterday, his take was this vote has passed. Kansans have had their say. Let's move on to what's next.
So, Katie, who do you think might be more energized heading into November? And this is the $64,000 question. The abortion rights advocates who are maybe feeling emboldened, or the anti-abortion voters who may have been kind of shocked by Tuesday's outcome?
I think it's both. The anti-abortion activists have always had a strong showing in Kansas. They were expecting this to be close and potentially to win, and we were very surprised two nights ago, to see it not even be close. So they will be out in force. They have a chance to try to non-retain some of the justices that ruled that there's an abortion right in Kansas. And it will be hard for abortion rights advocates to keep the coalition they built together. The coalition in Kansas that defeated this amendment was not just Democrats. It was not just independents. It was a coalition that included, conservatives, libertarian-leaning voters, as well as Democrats and independents who came out motivated by this specific issue. It's going to take a lot of work to hold that coalition together to vote for candidates rather than a specific issue.
That's really interesting, Katie. Our executive producer was talking to us about how conservative Kansas is. And in other conservative states, we have seen different results when it comes to anti-abortion restrictions. This one obviously being the very first to go on the ballot. What do you make of Kansas being a conservative state, and what implication do you think that could have for other states?
Yeah, so Kansas has this really deep history with the anti-abortion movement dating back to the Summer of Mercy, the murder of George Tiller. And so it created a clear playbook of how a conservative state can protect abortion rights when you create that broad coalition. But we can't discount both the impact that Dobbs had, and Kansas being the first vote. That motivated a lot of voters across a broad swath of ideologies in the state. You also can't discount Kansas's history as being this state that was founded on being a free state. There is a very strong libertarian streak in the state, a very strong sense of, we were founded to be free. We were founded to kind of keep government intrusion out of people's lives. And so you saw that through line that's been true in all of Kansas's history show up on Tuesday.
Very interesting. All right, Katie Bernard, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, next on CBS News, gas prices falling across most of the country.
That is great news. Well, we're going to take a look at what's fueling the price drop and if we can expect it to last. That's coming up next. You're streaming CBS News.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Norah O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays
when weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging wind.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Well, we have been looking forward to talking about good news.
Yes.
And we have some to share with you. Drivers are feeling less pain at the pump than they did this time last month.
Gas prices slowly declining from record highs earlier this summer. So the price of gas now averaging, and this is good news, really, $4.11 a gallon, because that's down by more than 70 cents a gallon from just 1 month ago. It's also 90 cents lower than in June, when gas prices hit the highest recorded average ever of more than $5 a gallon.
But we know that it still is painful. So we want to bring in Laura Santacola. She joins us now. She's the energy refining and